The question I want to explore today is, which kind of coal? Because I recently start again. Sorry. I recently went. The question I want to explore today is, which kind of coal? Because I recently met one of the smartest young energy minds I've been around in a long time. And she didn't know there were different kinds of coal. Not because she isn't informed, but because most of us never hear that distinction. And once you learn that one kind of coal is used to make steel, and that you can't build nuclear power plants or wind turbines, transmission lines, railways, bridges, ports, or much of modern civilization without steel, a lot of conversations around coal start sounding very different. Let's get into it. I was standing inside a uranium mine recently, 480 meters underground. Very cool. And I had one of my favorite kinds of conversations. I was on a tour with a group of brilliant young women from around the world, deep in the energy space, genuinely passionate about where the world's power comes from and who gets access to it, the kind of people that make you optimistic about what's coming next. And at some point we got talking about mining, obviously, and what it means to pull things out of the ground, how hard it is, and the different resources that make our modern lives work. And then someone made a comment, something like, well, aren't you glad they're mining uranium and not coal? So I thought about it and I casually asked, well, which kind of coal? And she stopped, looked at me. What do you mean? And I realized something. Here's one of the sharpest young energy minds I'd met in a while. Genuinely informed, genuinely curious. And this distinction just genuinely wasn't on her radar yet, which means it probably isn't on most people's radar either. Because most people think coal is just coal. One thing, one conversation, one category. But it isn't. There are different kinds of coal that do completely different jobs, and we need them both. The first is thermal coal. It's also called steam coal. This is the one most people talk about and what they picture. You burn it, it produces heat. That heat turns into electricity. This powers our grids, heats our homes, and right now it still provides electricity to billions, with a B, of people around the world who don't have any other option right now. The second, that nobody really seems to know about, is metallurgical coal. Sometimes we say met coal for short, or coking coal. I usually just call it steel-making coal because that makes the most sense. And this one does a completely different job. You might have guessed, it makes steel. So you heat it up in the absence of air. It transforms into something called coke, which is a huge carbon-rich material. We use that in a blast furnace, and we turn it, and you use it to turn iron ore into steel. Long and short of it, turns into steel. So for those of you in my chem class flashback, because I was a chemistry teacher, the first kind, steam coal, you burn it in air, that's combustion, it makes electricity. The second kind, you heat it without air, that's called pyrolysis. Not paralysis, pyrolysis. Anyway, different coal, different chemistry, different reactions, different job entirely, different functions. And that's the part most people don't know. Right away, I need for you to know that there is no large-scale way to make steel without using steel-making coal. People are working on alternatives. There's hydrogen steel, green steel, new technologies. Some of it is genuinely promising, and a lot of it is super cool. But the scale that we need that's required to replace what met coal does today, we're nowhere close yet. And then suddenly when you think about that, you start realizing how connected all this is. Because you can't build a nuclear power plant without steel. You can't build the uranium mine I was standing in without steel. You also can't build wind turbines, transmission lines, bridges, hospitals, railways, ports, tractors for your food, or data centers for your AI without steel. Which means that the uranium mine we were standing in existed because of coal, steel-making coal. Anyway, back to this discussion, and what I loved most about that conversation wasn't even that I got to talk about coal, it was her reaction. This smart woman didn't get defensive. She didn't call on all the stats that live in her brain about the issues with coal and just get stuck in that mode. Instead, she got curious. She expanded. She said, I don't know about that. Help me understand more. And we spent probably a half hour talking about steel and mining and energy and how hard it is to actually build and power modern civilization. And to me, that's the best kind of conversation. Nobody's trying to win. Nobody's pretending the world is simpler and more black and white than it is. Just people getting curious enough to understand it a little more fully. So here's the takeaways. Coal is not one thing. Two kinds of coal. Steel making coal is helping you build the physical world around you. Thermal coal helps generate electricity. And the next time someone talks about coal when you're around and talks like it's the single villain in a simple story, you get to participate in the conversation, and you'll be smart enough to ask the question, which kind of coal? I'm Lynn Exner, and this is Smart Enough.